Education is one of the most important factors when it comes to raising the future generation. And with the current state of education in the U.S. being behind that of other countries, we've decided to sit down with 3 ed majors to see how they feel about the future of education. Can you explain to me who you are and why you chose your major in education?
My name's Kaylee. I'm Alex, and I'm a junior at Illinois State.
I'm Alex Johnson. I'm 20 and a junior at UCCS in Colorado.
I have 2 younger brothers. They've been a huge influence on my life. And like my major, I guess, my grandma, she was also an educator. She taught kids her whole life. I chose it simply just because I love to work with kids. Also, I want to make a difference in kids' lives. For as long as I can remember, I've just always loved teaching in general, and I want to do it for the rest of my life.
I originally started as a finance and econ major right out of high school, but as most people coming out of high school, I feel like I didn't really know what I was doing. So I picked those majors and then took some classes and realized that probably wasn't for me. Thought about what I actually wanted to do and like what would kind of make me happy, how I want to impact the world, and it seemed like being a teacher would probably be the best way. And so I just switched my major and decided to take that path seriously.
So would you say your drive to impact the youth was something that really spurred your desire to become an education major?
Definitely. I was always good at school and realized that how I felt about a class or a subject at the time almost entirely depended on who that teacher was. And if that teacher was engaging in all of this, like if they were having a positive impact, I almost felt like whatever subject or whatever they were trying to teach was also having the positive impact. So like the impact that happened, I just wanted to hopefully be able to make that positive for the youth.
Okay. What would you say drives your motivation to teach?
Like I said, I love kids, and specifically kids that like don't believe in themselves, maybe don't have the best home life, anything like that. I want them to come to my classroom and believe in themselves, feel like they can learn, trust me as an adult to be there for them, even with their personal problems, not just school-related problems. I don't know, I just want to help shape young and brilliant minds. I think that school is often like a very safe space for a lot of kids, and like their home life can't be that necessarily. And so I want to like provide that same like comfort and like support, I guess, that a lot of kids unfortunately don't get at home.
How do you feel about the current state of education in the United States?
I think that education is going to be different from here on out. Like, for example, snow days, like that's not going to happen. We have the tools to be virtual now, and that's a huge change for a lot of kids that are developing. I also think that education as we know it is not on an even playing field. I think a lot of like low-income areas are struggling to get the resources or the opportunities to even be as successful as other communities, and that's not cool. I feel like obviously COVID is a big discussion, and while going online is good for the health of the communities, I think it definitely negatively affects students' learning. So I do think it's important, but going on Zoom is a big adjustment for students, and I think some students have lost motivation or access to resources that they would have if they were in person. So I think that's definitely changed our education, but I know that teachers still are working as hard as they can to adapt and still teach students what they need to be taught.
I feel like it's really stagnant, and it probably has been for a while, and there's a ton of issues and stuff that I'm glad to find that in the education classes they focus on a lot of the social injustice and those things, and that hopefully this generation will be able to take that into our teaching, and it maybe won't be as stagnant as it has been, especially with technology. But as I become a teacher, I'll come to more problems.
Do you feel that more money needs to be invested into education?
Oh, absolutely. And that just kind of goes back to like having an equal opportunity. I mean, when you look at like English as a second language, for example, a lot of programs in schools are not giving the proper funding or even resources. Like if I'm not able to communicate with my students effectively, how are they ever gonna succeed? I think a lot more funding needs to go into like specific programs in schools, as well as like the school in general.
Mm-hmm. And when you say specific programs, which ones are you alluding to?
Definitely like any like English as a second language, like I was saying, those programs. Any like special education. Oftentimes kids are not like screened properly. They're kind of just being thrown into a group without them necessarily like knowing if that's where they belong or if that's like the effective way to teach kids. You have to look at each kid like as an individual brain. You can't just lump them in with this like select program, I guess. And if you look at like, I don't know, the educators around you, like I'm fortunate enough to get to where I am, but it's just, I don't know, it's crazy the opportunity that people lack just because of where they're born, you know, or what like social class they're in. It's ridiculous.
Should I?
Oh yeah, let it pass, let it pass.
I think more money would always be a good thing just to get teachers and students and all the staff resources they need. But I think the more important thing is just where the money goes. I think we don't necessarily need more money, but I think we just need to be smart about where we put our money and just make sure like we're thinking about where it's going and who it's benefiting and long term versus short term. Because like if it's something that'll help the long term, I think it's a smart financial choice. But I think every decision where money's put in schools just needs to be thought about and just make sure all the money's going to the right places.
We talked a lot about this in one of the education classes that I took, and it's yes and no. So it's not as if there needs to be more money spent just on education. It's like the money that needs to be spent needs to be allocated correctly. Like there's already so much money and so many resources in school that if they're allocated correctly, the teachers are paid a good wage. So you can have good teachers in all different types of neighborhoods instead of just the suburbs or places like that, where they are incentivized to want to teach in different places, more diverse places. It will expand teaching if the buildings and the structures that kids go into every day aren't depressing and feeling like prisons with stuff like that. If you take the money away from the security and random bullshit that they stuff that they spend on at some points, like if you can just reallocate the money, I think is better than just blanket saying that there needs to be more money. Because for sure, throwing money is always better, but money's not real bad.
What message would you send to those who control teacher funding then?
Sort of what I just explained, I would say. I just want to make sure that money is going to the right places and no money is going to waste, just because I know parents, teachers very often use their own money to pay for things in their classroom because they don't always get enough funding. And they also use their money to pay for things specifically for students if they need more resources than they have. So I just think that needs to be considered, and teachers definitely need a fund to be able to even just decorate their classrooms and just make it an inviting space. I just think it's super important deciding where all the money goes and everything.
To trust the teachers. If these are the people that you want to put on the front lines and say these are the essential workers when a pandemic happens, and thank you teachers for all the hard work you do. Like we know teachers out of their own paycheck buy supplies and school supplies and do so much extra for students already. It would just be nice if the people that had the power trusted the teachers who were actually there affecting the students' lives and were there day to day and could actually understand it more than just the people who have control of money.
We're your future. Education, I think, is the base and like the platform for your future. Truly, I mean, whatever career you choose, you have to go to school. You know, you have to get the proper education, and as a country, we'll succeed more. And I feel like that's obvious. People know that, but I don't know what is so hard, I guess, to get that like equal opportunity I was talking about. But
how do you feel about the future of education? How do you feel about the future of education? How do you feel about the future of education? Do you feel that it's in good hands, or are you kind of worried about where things are going?
I think if we learned anything the past few years, it's that everything is unpredictable and you never know. Even with what we're living in right now, you don't even know how next week is going to be specifically with schools. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But I know teachers work super, super hard, and Zoom and going out of school and back in school and everything changing is not ideal for anyone. But I do know that teachers are working as hard as they can with what they're given, and I guess we'll just have to see, but I'm hopeful. So
I think it's good in good hands, hopefully. I mean, the only concern I have is with online. I'm hoping obviously we'll get entirely back in person, and kids will have that social aspect and everything that comes along with school besides the education. Because I know for me personally, I don't do well reading online and text like that. I like the book. I just think if we get back to that and we get more trust into the teachers, I think we'll be in a good place. I think the generation, my fellow peers in my education classes, I think it's in good hands.
I'm hopeful. I'm very hopeful that people are going into education for the right reasons. They want to be that safe space for kids I was talking about earlier. I'm hoping that we'll see more kids being successful and we'll see equal opportunity. Just one teacher at a time, I guess.
All right, I think that's the perfect note to close off on.